Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jagdeep Ahluwalia, and I'm the founding secretary of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce of Greater Houston, which I currently serve as executive director. We would like to thank Shell, who helped launch our Thought Leadership series, which includes our distinguished lecture series and the Women Being Business series, which today's event is a part of. We want to thank Fred Whipple, Anna Knopf, Fraser Wilcombe, and Alicia Holmes Henderson for their guidance and support over the years and with these events and our supplier diversity efforts. I want to introduce our Chamber Executive Committee, our board, our directors at large, and our advisors. Today's webinar will be recorded and forwarded to all participants, and we will load it to the Chamber's website, iaccgh.com. The program is also being streamed live on the ISCCGH and SEVA Facebook accounts, and several of our members and supporters are also live streaming on their Facebook accounts. We are proud to be serving the business community for over 20 years, and we work closely with our sister chambers and associations. Our partner organizations who help promote today's event are shown on the slide which is being displayed. We thank each one of you for your support in reaching out to your communities and encouraging them to either log on your Facebook accounts or log on through our portal. We also want to thank our media partners who help us spread the word both before and after the event. Each one of these media partners is an integral part of our outreach to the community. I would now like to invite the president and the chairman of our board, Tarush Anand, to welcome you on behalf of the Chamber's board and move today's program forward. Tarush is an attorney by profession. He is a partner at the law firm of Brown Sims, where he practices civil litigation. He has represented a broad range of domestic and international businesses in various types of business disputes across the country. I now hand over to the president of the Chamber, Tarush Anand.
Thank you, Jagdeep. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Another one, of course, of these virtual events where we don't get to shake hands and meet in person, but the current climate puts us in that position today, and we make the best of it. We have a lot of new people signed up for today's webinar, and that's great. And I think that makes it incumbent upon me to tell you a little bit about us as an organization and who we are. The Chamber of Commerce was founded 21 years ago in 1999. And if you think back to that time, it was a very different time than where we are today. Of course, setting aside the pandemic, otherwise as well. Y2K was a big concern for companies back then, changing out their code. The Backstreet Boys and other boy bands reigned supreme on the top music charts. But perhaps more pertinent to what we do as a Chamber of Commerce, India's role in the business community and on the world stage was very different than what it is today, and India-US relations were very different back then than they were today. Nevertheless, a group of business leaders in conjunction with the then Consul General of India in Houston had the foresight to realize that the relationship with India was on the upswing and the future held bright things. And so they founded the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce to take advantage of what they thought would be the next defining relationship of trade and commerce that the US had with a foreign country. And sure enough, over the next 21 years, India's place on the world stage grew, and the trade relations between the US and India grew. And the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce was there every step of the way to leverage that and provide opportunities for Indian and US companies to grow along with that growing relationship. Our mission over the last 21 years has been focused on really three things. First would be to encourage and help trade and commerce both ways between India and the US. Second, to support local businesses, provide them with the tools and resources they need to thrive and grow. And third, to be the voice of the Indo-American business community. To accomplish those goals, we have set forth on putting out a series of initiatives. And those include things like trade delegations, both to India and from India, a thought leadership series where we've hosted a series of prominent speakers from business, government, and the nonprofit spheres, a healthcare initiative aimed at providing the healthcare industry's needs and providing them with access to the local community. And that's been supported by our various healthcare members, including CHI St. Luke's, MD Anderson, Memorial Hermann, and many others. Our Next Gen Exchange focused on providing tools and support to the next generation. And lastly, but not least, our hugely popular Women Mean Business series. As a Chamber of Commerce, we don't do business, but we exist to make business happen. If you're a member, thank you. If you're not a member, I invite you to visit our website, iaccgh.com, to learn more about us or to contact us to learn how we can thrive and grow together. So with that, let me turn to today's event. And to introduce the event, I'd like to hand things over to my fellow board member, Joya Shukla. Joya is a current board member and the past president of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. Professionally, she is an oil and gas professional and currently works as the lead project manager at ExxonMobil. She's been a long-term supporter of the Chamber and has been very involved in the Women Mean Business series. Help me welcome Joya.
Darish, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to have worked with Asha and Pankaj during their tenure as leaders of the Chamber and help establish this Women Mean Business series. We've had the pleasure of having many folks here, some you'll hear from later today, such as Marie Garadia and Asha Dume, and Melisha, who actually presented almost 7 years ago, is back in a different capacity now. As we see Melisha on her journey of progress and look at everything else women in the community have been doing, it's been my thrill and honor to run this series, much like a series at Shell, where the women's group there ran a series called Pearls of Wisdom, where women would get on there, would really get a chance to share their challenges and how they've overcome them and what's made them successful. So I hope that as we listen to Melisha and Alyssa here in just a few moments, we have pearls to take away from them and continue and help us all uplift on our journeys. Thanks. Melisha, I'll pass it on to you now.
Thank you, Joya. I'm going to ask Bhavna to start the presentation as well. Perfect. Joya, I think you're right on. This is such a relevant topic right now, just being a woman during this age of COVID. And what Alyssa, my counterpart that'll be joining us, and I will share is the impact it's had on us personally and professionally. Now, we don't have it figured out, but we will share our pearls of wisdom as Joya referenced. And so with that, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. If we go to the next slide. Do we have the next slide? Okay. That there is my family. I am the CEO and Senior Vice President of Memorial Hermann Sugarland Hospital and Memorial Hermann Southwest Hospital. That there is my husband, Bavish, and my two little boys, Jay and Avi. I'm was born in San Antonio, Texas, and early on decided I wanted a career where I'd help people. And for the longest time, I wanted to be a physician, and it was when I was at the University of Texas that I had the opportunity to learn about the field in healthcare administration. And so I chose that path and did my graduate studies at Trinity University. And for the past 18 years, have had the opportunity to serve in a role where I've had the opportunity to help impact the communities and people I work with. I've worked at the VA North Texas in Dallas, Tenet Healthcare System, and for the past 13 years, I've been with the Memorial Hermann Health System, which has a very strong mission, advancing the health of those that we serve. At this time, I also want to introduce my colleague and good friend, Alyssa Parrish.
Hi, thank you, Melisha, and I'm so excited to be here. Again, like Melisha said, I don't think we have the recipe to the secret sauce, but we're going to share our tidbits. I am a corporate healthcare attorney. I have 12 years of legal experience. My experience is mostly set in healthcare startups. I was the general counsel of Ready Clinic. That's based here in Houston. And today is actually my first day on the job working with Rite Aid, working 100% remote thanks to COVID-19 because Rite Aid's actually based in Pennsylvania. I'm a Houston native, and pictured there is my husband and my twin 5-year-old girls. And that picture is very much representative of how COVID has been, with those two attacking me around my leg for the past 6 months. Thank you again for being here. And so one of the things we're going to do, if we can go to the next slide, is give you just a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. Like Melisha said, we're going to start with the effects of COVID-19. We're going to be taking a few polls. In fact, one of the polls is shown here. Just kind of seeing how you're doing. We're also going to talk about the balancing act that we've had to do as women and as leaders in our profession, and then also talk about some of the resources. So there's going to be a poll coming out that we're going to poll our audience to figure out how COVID-19 has affected you either personally or professionally. So I saw one that just popped up on my screen, and you'll notice there's a few options to choose from. Anything from loss of routine normalcy, no real effect, which I'd be shocked, but you never know. More caregiving responsibilities. So if you can take the moment to go ahead and hit the button, and then we will learn how everybody's doing here shortly.
All right, we'll give it another second or so.
I guess it's hard if it's multiple choice, if it's multiple of the sections.
As we get the poll results, Alyssa, maybe we could speak to how this has had an impact on us personally or professionally.
Absolutely. So if we go to the next slide, we can give an understanding. This was a poll that was done. If you go to the next slide real quick, that basically bucketed down to the 4 major factors that people sort of identified as having sort of a psychological distress with COVID. Very highly, their health, financial income, normalcy of routine, and caregiving roles. And Melisha, why don't you get a chance to if any of those have impacted you either personally or professionally?
Now, Alyssa, all of these have impacted myself personally and professionally. I'll start with personally, the stress that this has brought just in regards to health. My dad has cancer. I have 2 grandparents that are really senior in their age, and my mom and her sisters, they are caregivers. And just the change and, the recommendations given by the CDC on what to do if you have comorbidities or if you're this age. And so there's definitely a lot of concerns for us and additional stress on how are we going to best take care of our loved ones. And in regards to routine, there was a change, come spring break, the kids didn't go back to school. So there was an adjustment in, my husband working from home. He, prior to that, traveled quite a bit. The kids being at home now, and just the nature of work that I had, being at work more often for longer hours and coming on the weekends. So definitely a lot of changes. And at the same time, it wasn't just my changes that were happening to myself, but to my colleagues, to people that I work with. We know in regards to financial income, a lot of folks were impacted, whether it was a cut in their pay or, maybe being furloughed. We had employee partners here where their significant other had lost their job. And so at that time as an organization, we also had to be agile on how we're going to help respond and help with these different stress levels that are being put on our employee partners, which forced us to be creative and spontaneous as well, and learn from other organizations across the country. During that time, Memorial Hermann, we partnered with Bright Horizons and Crisis Care to see how we could provide care or caregiver care to our employees. We provided payroll advance options, retirement saving plans, withdrawals or loans. But as an organization, like many other organizations, we had to respond to help our workforce manage and the stress. How about you?
So health is probably my number one. I also have active cancer. I've had leukemia for the past 2 years. And working in a healthcare setting is obviously very scary to me. I never thought of it as that it could be detrimental to my health until COVID-19 came. So, I immediately had to shift to working 100% from home, as did my husband and as did my children, as you spoke of earlier, with the very elongated spring break that we've had for the past 6 months. Having to juggle all that was very interesting and it's kind of trial by fire. The most interesting thing, I think, from the financial income is that I've talked to about 80% of my attorney friends, and we've all sort of researched something on behalf of our clients, and it's usually around furlough impacts and how to do furlough, how to do pay cuts, warn notices as it relates to job loss, and cutting hours. And we all sort of talked, and everybody was asking these sorts of questions, which means that they were either contemplating or implementing, right, these initiatives and the effect that had on their employees. And that was very stressful, just to know that when you're doing this kind of research, that that they're going to have a direct impact on the employees of your clients. And I would say those two are definitely the most, impactful for me. I think one of the things, if we go to the next slide, that, Melisha and I have in common is we're both in a healthcare setting. And apparently we're not the only women in a healthcare setting. This shows you right here sort of this graph of the sectors of where there's women predominance. And you can see that healthcare, leisure and hospitality, so travel, education, and retail sectors are all heavily influenced and employers of women, which those are the sectors that are probably having some of the most effects of COVID-19. And, Melisha, could you give us a little bit of insight on how Memorial Hermann is the makeup as it relates to men and women and sort of how that works?
It's really reflective of what you see here. Just the 2 campuses that I oversee, which is close to 3,000 employees, 80% of our makeup is female. Memorial Hermann as a whole, we have a little over 28,000 employees, and our makeup is 78% women. And so you're right on as far as the frontline workers, those that were asking to come into work, and some not having the flexibility because we need them on the front lines to help us take care of our patients, are being asked to be here on the front lines. And so a very high percentage. And if you think about the slide that we had prior, they're also dealing with the health issues that they may have personally or professionally, any education impact that they've had with school changes. And you could see right there, education, like you said, has had a significant impact. And so Memorial Hermann makes up what you see right here in front of us.
Right. And, the next slide you know, thinking about, okay, so now you have these frontline workers that need to be in the hospital, right? Because you can't Zoom a surgery, right? So one of the things that Melisha and I looked at was sort of what is the extra time that is sort of been required because of schools doing virtually or you know, having to not meet in person. And then also just the extra cleaning and the extra sanitation needs that have come from COVID-19. I mean, we all can't stay inside forever. So we do have to go out to the stores. And what we found out was from this source that both men and women are having to pick up quite a bit of slack. And I'm sure it depends on households and probably varies week to week on which members are picking up what slacks. But you can see here that women on average are picking up 15 more hours a week as it relates to childcare and household tasks. So I know personally for me that my husband and I are shouldering probably more evenly. And it's been really nice to actually be able to have him to help me do all the shopping since I can't do it with my cancer status. How about you, Melisha?
You know, I have to say kudos to everyone out there, because 15 additional hours is just a lot of hours when we don't have enough hours in the day. And like you, Alyssa, I've been very fortunate with my husband, Bavish. You know, I had shared that he did travel prior to COVID and now he's working from home. But he has really been the one in our household that's been coordinating with the kids' school, with going grocery shopping. And I can't imagine not having him as that resource. And I know all of us have had to rely on somebody, whether it's getting additional support or leaning on friends or family. But for me, it's been my husband. And we've been very fortunate that he's been able to help in taking on the additional hours. But you know, our weekends have changed because now we're doing more of the task on the weekends that we weren't doing on the prior to. And so we've all had to shift our normal weekday and weekend makeup. I'm interested in seeing who everyone else has leaned on. And so that would bring us to our next slide, where we have another poll for the team. We'll give our administrator a few more seconds to see if we're able to get this poll. If not, we'll share towards the end of the presentation the results of the poll that we received. Alyssa, I know you had shared, was there anything else you wanted to add as far as who you've leaned on most during this period?
You know, aside from my husband, and I've really asked a lot from 5-year-olds for my children. In fact, you know, they're upstairs playing right now because school doesn't start for them until Wednesday. And, you know, I've really had to ask quite a bit of them and to not interrupt. And so kudos to my household. But I have to also say that my employer has been amazing. One of the things that Rite Aid did in particular is that they really focused on sort of mental exhaustion and kind of empathy as it relates to the employee. And they gave every leadership employee the Calm app. And I know that sounds, I had never used sort of a meditation or anything as a sleep aid. And now for the last 120 days, my children and I have been using it daily as a way to sort of decompress and sort of compartmentalize what is happening to us. And I mean, I just think that I'm very proud to be with an organization that not only focuses on providing care to its patients and customers, but also worries about the mental well-being of the employees so that they can kind of keep going through this time. How about Memorial Hermann or anybody else that you've leaned on during this time that's helped?
Melissa, I think that that helps us transition to where we are right now. This is what the series is about, Women Mean Business. And really for Memorial Hermann and those in healthcare, this has really impacted our normal operations and our day-to-day, how we take care of business in healthcare. Oh, so there we go. There's the first poll that's coming up. We could see that loss of routine and normalcy has been the largest impact, but everyone having an impact in all areas.
I'm interested to see that nobody had no real effect. I mean, you know, in some ways we're all in the same boat. So, you know, not surprised by these, but yeah, I know that everybody is mourning the loss of their normalcy.
Yes. I don't know if there is going to be normal again. I think this is our new normal. And so from Memorial Hermann, you know, and just employees, oh, okay, well, we got the next response as well. So who we've leaned on the most, it seems like it's an even split between their partner or family members. That's great. I think having a support system throughout this time is really important because the thing here is you're not the only one being impacted. Everyone has been impacted. I'm going to continue to just talk through the impact we've had as a healthcare organization and how my role has shifted over the past 6 months. I can't believe it's been 6 months. But for us, in our response, many of our workers, you know, they put their own safety at risk and their own families at risk because they had to come in. And initially there was a lot of anxiety and fear and concern because everyone was scared of COVID-19. It was a brand new coronavirus. And in what our workforce does, our physicians, we have amazing physicians. And at the same time, we were learning, the rest of the country and the rest of the world was learning. And there were Zoom calls with folks in New York and in China, and we were learning at the same time. And so we were rapidly evolving with CDC guidelines. I mean, constant changes. As that was evolving, we were rapidly responding. And the amount of change that we had in the first few months of the pandemic, I don't know if we'd have that amount of change in a decade. And so just major changes that we had were, one, you know, focusing on safety and precautions. We had, you know, screening stations. One of my hospitals, we have 8 entrances. Well, we can't have 8 entrances operating 24/7 because we have to put staff to help screen and go through different questionnaires. And so we limited that, and all that takes adjustment because then you have to work on parking and where people are going to park. Masking all employees, that was a huge shift to us. Masking our patients as they come through the door. Limiting visitors. You know, a big change for us was also limiting our volunteers, which was really hard because they're part of our workforce, they're part of the family. And we've had volunteers that have been volunteering with us for over 30, 40 years. And for their safety, we asked them not to come in. And so we use them in different ways, and we are ready and excited for them to come back. But it's really allowed different people to step up to the occasion because we've had to be creative. We had to be innovative. And at the end of the day, we still had business to do. How we took care of patients, that changed. I mean, we know how to take care of our heart patients. We know how to take care of our neuro patients. How do we take care of COVID patients? And that took some time in learning best practices, creating cohort units and having robust protocols in place. And then leaning on technology. Just like we have Zoom, we've seen a significant increase in folks going to virtual care. And I think that's something that's going to continue to stay. It's a great option. And then managing the challenges that our workforce is going through. I mentioned anxiety and stress and all the changes. So as an organization, we've also focused on providing resources such as wellness, being flexible. We know not everyone that works in healthcare has to works in a hospital. And so the flexibility to work at home, depending on the role, flexible work schedules. And so we've responded to the shift and the demands that COVID has brought. And I know a lot of organizations have had to change and adapt. And how has that been for you, Alyssa?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things my former employer, Ready Clinic, we used to have brick and mortar clinics that were located inside Iaccg's in the Houston area. And we've went completely virtual 2 weeks ago. So no more brick and mortar. All clinicians are now doing telemedicine. Talk about complete shift, which probably would never have happened. It probably would have been a 5-year transition, and that transition now happened in 5 months. So really accelerated some of the organizational goals because everybody's normalcy had changed and they needed to stay home. I also, my new job, I am here, Rite Aid would never have thought about hiring somebody in Houston, Texas, when their corporate offices are in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. But because they're no longer limited to who comes into the corporate office anymore, they can seek talent in multiple nations. And so I'm actually, one of the bright lights for me is that I actually was able to have a job with an organization that I probably wouldn't have had before COVID. So I'm very grateful on that forefront, is that it's also expanding the way people are going to recruit, which, makes the employee also think about, I don't have to just stick to an organization that is in my backyard. So I'm very proud of that. One of the things on these polls is, one of the things we talked about sort of next is, okay, everything we're doing from an organizational standpoint, right? We're both in leadership roles, all the things where we're doing for our employees. And then we kind of bring it back to, well, what are we doing for ourselves though? Kind of, at the end of the day, you can't be Atlas with, the earth on your back. So our very next poll takes into consideration, how are you taking care of you? And some of these are things that Melisha and I have been doing, and we've kind of got to do, because you can't necessarily go to any restaurant you want to. Or, you being outside is kind of a privilege now. So if you can take a moment just to be able to answer one of these, and we're really curious of what have you been doing that has helped you sort of refresh. And Melisha, if anything you want to talk about of what you've been doing, I know you're always going. So,
I think for me personally, I also get my energy with being around people and the work that we're doing. And so on days where we're just exhausted, and it's just great to see how the community has come together. And as a healthcare organization, we've just had tremendous support from different partners, and thank you notes from kids to food donations to our frontline workers. And so we've had a lot of support within the healthcare world, where our team knows that folks are rooting them on. And so that's been really encouraging. But for me, at the end of a long day, just spending time with the family, and I need a few minutes to myself. I do have Peloton, and so I'll get on the bike, or I'll use the app and do a 10-minute yoga session or meditation session. And just getting 10 minutes in for me has really been important. And, I've been able to do Zoom calls with my college friends and mixing it up. But this has also forced me to simplify some things. I feel like naturally there's just a hustle and bustle to life, and now we could say pre-COVID, but after COVID, like, our weekends have been really calm. Our evenings are just us, which has forced us to just be home with each other, cooking more, going on walks as a family. How about for you, Alyssa?
Well, and I think everything you talked about leads into our next slide, because this is sort of Melisha and I, if we have any pearls of wisdom, here they are. I think for the most part that you know, for example, I asked my employer, look, I need a week to just debrief between jobs. And in between that, I was going to head to Florida, drive to Florida, and 2 hurricanes were coming. One was heading to Florida, and one was at the time heading for Houston, Texas. And usually if hurricanes are coming, I'm like, you got to be, you know, oh my gosh, we got to do all these things. And now it's like, oh, well, add it on. Let's just keep going. You know, we already have the toilet paper and the water. It's created a very flexible, and, you know, you're not really surprised. And it also kind of levels out your anxiety quite a bit. Oh, interesting. Oh, exercise is, yeah. You guys are good. It took me about 3 months to start exercising. I was very much glued to my computer, which isn't very healthy, but I'm glad to see that, you know, social distance, spending time with friends. Wow. And cooking as well. That's excellent.
Yeah. I've heard everyone would say that many people share that they've gained the COVID-19. So that can also be in response to that.
That's what started me exercising, actually. But, you know, just being flexible, being, you know, more used to things coming at you and having to just take it, break it down, make simplistic choices on things like, look, we can't overreact. We have to do this. You know, it's just, when you're handling quite a bit, it actually makes it easier somehow. That being said, I will say that being resilient is not a marathon. I have to say that the endorphins that I had at the beginning of COVID-19, with all the CDC changes, with what kind of masks do we wear? Is everybody getting fit tested? Are we going to put these on patients? How do we explain to patients, right? All those questions that we were thinking about, you know, having a sustained resiliency is very, very difficult. And resilience without rest is nearly impossible. So I really hope that everybody, as they're cooking and exercising and doing all these things, are taking a moment to really, you know, kind of debrief and take a step back. And, you know, if you're with your employer asking for time off, you know, trying to just at least get away. Melisha, what about you? What of the 4, or any of the 4 that you think are the most, has helped you the most, or the most learning points that you've had?
I think all of them to some degree. And I do want to highlight, it's not just personally, like it's not just applicable to yourself, but whether you're an employer or you're an employee that works in an organization, these are things that we need to be mindful of. And if we are the employer, to role model. I can't be a leader and ask folks to be resilient or flexible if I'm not. And so for me, I think flexibility has been really important. You know, naturally, I like things a certain way. So it's really forced me to just be more agile and pivot from one direction to another direction. And I think if you do that and you continue to move forward and you show your team that you could do it, and your loved ones, and being a support system for each other, which brings me to resources. Having resources is key, whether it's your family or your friends or the Calm app that you referenced, Alyssa. But I think it's important to focus on yourself and find those resources to help you get through and be resilient. But each of these have key elements for me that have been important personally and professionally. And so at this point, I'm going to introduce a guest that we have on the panel with us, Iaccgh Dume. And, you know, I'd love to get her feedback on being a woman during this time. Iaccgh is the Director of Sales and Marketing at Elliott Systems, which helps companies in digital transformation of their work processes, especially using Internet of Things technology. She's immediate past chair, president of Pratham Houston, raising funds for educating underprivileged children in India. She serves on the board of Lighthouse of Houston and has also served as president of Club 24 of Houston. She was instrumental and one of the pioneers in kicking off the Women Mean Business series in 2013. She is definitely a role model for me, and I'd love to get her take And then we're going to get the take of Dr. Gradia and then open it up for Q&A. And so with that, I'm going to introduce, have Asha come on board.
Thank you, Melisha, for that very kind introduction. Thank you also, Jagdeep, Joya, and Tarush for inviting me for this excellent event on the Chamber's 20th anniversary. A very good afternoon to all the attendees. It was wonderful listening to the pearls of wisdom from Melisha and Alicia. I remember very vividly the first inaugural sold-out event that we had organized at BMC Software when my husband Pankaj Dhume was the president of the Chamber in 2013. Mrs. Nanditi Parvataneni, wife of the then Consul General of India, was the first speaker. I'm so glad that the Chamber continues to provide an excellent platform for women in business and has made this event popular. Pankaj and I are very proud of our association with the Chamber. COVID-19 has certainly turned all our lives upside down. No one is immune from this, and it has created an unprecedented situation for this century. As they say, when life gives you lemons, what do? You make lemonade. So we women are very resilient and strong and good at adapting to any situation. I have also tried to find the silver linings and make the best of my situation. Life for me changed drastically both at work and at home. At Elliott Systems, we announced a work from home policy to our team way ahead of any government announcements. This helped our employees to stay safe and healthy, and they continue to be very productive today. We also held several webinars which were very well received and well attended. On the personal front, both our adult children moved back and have been working from home, which has been a blessing as we have had unexpected bonus time to bond and become even more closer as a family. I enjoy cooking continuously for them and thereby experimenting with many different cuisines. In addition to cooking, I'm also working on growing my own herb and organic veggies garden. In the future, I might be able to tell you whether I have a green thumb or maybe not. It's no secret that I'm a very social person and I love meeting people and attending events. Quarantine has been a great time for me to self-reflect and find peace and happiness from within. Walking an average of 20,000 steps every day, painting and singing lessons are some of the other hobbies I've cultivated and incorporated in my daily lifestyle. This is helping me to stay positive, fit, focused, and most importantly, keep up very high spirits all the time, which I think is very important because that rubs on the people around me as well. I also continue to actively participate on the boards of Pratham Houston and the Lighthouse of Houston. I recently turned 50 and I believe that COVID has helped me become a much better version of myself. In addition to Elliott Systems, I'm also working on a new business idea that I hope to announce and launch very soon. So stay tuned for that piece of information. And with that, I wish you and your loved ones a very healthy and safe time ahead. Thank you for this opportunity to be here and be part of this wonderful event.
Thank you so much. And if you learn how to get the green thumb, you let us know.
If I can do it, anybody can do it too. So
good, I hope so. I now have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Marie Goradia. She is a Goradia. Goradia. She is a past president of the Pratham USA's Houston chapter. She has a PhD in molecular biology, and she has served on the MD Anderson Cancer Center board and the Asia Society board. She and her husband, Vijay, are founder and chairman emeritus of the Pratham USA. They have 2 children, Safira and Kevin. So thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us.
Thank you, Alyssa. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Jagdeep, it was a brilliant idea to start Women Means Business. I spoke an event in 2014, and I'm sure there have been great speeches by women for the past 5 years. Thank you, ladies, for talking today. I really enjoyed everything that you all said and took away some pearls of wisdom as well. Well, thank you for inviting me to speak today. COVID-19 hijacked us all. The CDC and the Trump administration were sending out conflicting information, and that resulted in confusion and a very scary time for all of us. The scientist in me was interested to learn about COVID-19, So I read up a lot about how it enters the cell, how it multiplies, and how the virus, as well as our own immune system, damages the lungs and the other organs. This enabled me to explain to people why we needed to wear masks, keep social distancing, wash our hands with soap and water, which destroys the virus, and why we should not touch our face, especially our eyes and our nose. We also realized that low-income people need to put food on the table, and that was hard for them. So our family donated to the food banks in Houston, as well as in Austin, where our son Kevin lives. Just as the US was going through this very rough patch, so was India, and so was Pratham. Our family stepped up and sent funds to Pratham to provide meals for the underprivileged in Mumbai. Everything changed after COVID-19. Y'all all know that too, because y'all talked about it today. Now life has changed for us. Now we go on long walks, we do yoga, we play the piano, sing, read, and play bridge. While before we were traveling the world, doing ballroom dancing and going to the gym. So things have changed completely. Zoom has been a lifeline for all of us. We have been able to connect with family and friends, not only in the US, but all across the world, as I'm sure you all are doing. In conclusion, I would say, despite the fear of COVID-19 hanging over all of us, we are very grateful just to be alive, happy, and healthy. And I hope it stays that way for all of us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Garadia. Thank you, Asha. Thank you, Alyssa. And of course, thank you, Malisha. I think that was a very, very engaging, timely, and important discussion on a topic that's affecting so many of us. Not just the women, frankly, the men as well, because COVID has made a lot more moms and a lot more dads nowadays with dual hats that we all have to play. So thank you for that. Let me invite our audience members at this point to post any questions they may have. If you're logged on an iPad or on a computer, at the bottom, there's a Q&A tab. Feel free to type in any questions you have, and we will try and take as many of them as possible. If it's not a question, you may ask for a comment on a certain topic, just any thoughts to keep the dialogue going. But before we get to the questions, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Shell on behalf of the Chamber for its strong and long-standing support of our activities, including its sponsorship of the Women Mean Business series and our Shell Distinguished Lecture series. I'd like to invite Alisa Henderson-Holmes of Shell to say a few words. Alisa has been with Shell since 2007. She's held various positions in the upstream Americas division of the business, and currently she serves as the program coordinator for supplier diversity and diversity outreach at Shell. It's my honor to welcome Alisa.
Thank you, Tarush. On behalf of Shell Oil, I'd like to thank Malisha and Alisa for their valued time and great comments and takeaways today. It was great conversation, making this a great virtual event. I want to thank the Chamber, Jagdeep, Tarush, Joya personally, for the great work they always put forth to make sure the events sponsored by Shell are always first class and relevant to the time and business concerns at hand. I also want to thank Aisha and Dr. Marie for their comments and taking time out to join us today. Everyone, thank you. This is definitely a Shell-worthy event.
Thank you for that, Alisa, really appreciate it. With that, let's turn over to questions. And I've been receiving a few and trying to curate these as the event has progressed. We are live casting this event to Facebook. So we received a few questions from Facebook, which people have texted me. One of them that's come in, let me read that out. Bear with me just a moment here. So the question is that volunteers play a major role in our hospitals. And with the impact of COVID and how volunteers may be hesitant now to come into the hospital, how are hospitals or places like Ready Clinic, if it applies to that, dealing with that?
That's a really good question, Tarush, and I briefly mentioned it, but it has been a huge impact for us where we have volunteers in key areas of the hospital, not just helping support our employees, but our patients and our visitors and their friendly faces when folks come through our doors. And so we recently just allowed some of our volunteers to come back based on their age range. It was a very difficult decision for us, but with the recommendations of the CDC and what's the safest thing to do, we're still holding on volunteers if they're over a certain age. So we've had volunteers that are helping us from home, making mask for employees and their families, helping us support the community with education, helping us with drives that we're working on. So we're still working and partnering with our volunteers. It just looks a little differently, but we are ready and excited to have our volunteers back, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, and I will say that as being a patient, I have to go to MD Anderson once every 3 months, and I really miss those volunteers. You have to be at MD Anderson for a while waiting because you have to see so many oncologists, cardiologists, and it was so lovely to see the trolley come by and they'd have coffee and peppermints for those who are feeling nauseous because of chemo. And they're usually cancer survivors as well. So they are, they're inspirational. And of course, because of, sort of the fact that they are cancer survivors, and of course, they're treating and helping people who are most vulnerable, they haven't quite come back yet. And I really am eager to see them back when they can at MD Anderson.
So one of those polls about how you're coping with the situation was interesting to me, especially the responses, because I think one of the top answers was cooking and the other was working out. And for me personally, it's been both in a certain sequence. Cooking early on when banana bread was something my wife mastered and DoubleTree cookies was something I mastered. And then that naturally led to the working out. So question focuses on working out. And let me ask you about that. With gyms being iffy right now, let's say, what workout techniques are you using and what are you hearing others use and what's working out well for you?
I know for me, I heard Melisha say she has a Peloton. I do too. I actually used my Peloton this morning. It was great. It got me all excited for this talk. What I also love about COVID-19 is I can work out a little bit more on my own time since I'm working remotely, which I couldn't do beforehand when I was in the office. So for me, Peloton, and honestly, walking. I have walked every square foot of my neighborhood. They're like, oh, there she is, 3 o'clock there. So those two things, even in the August heat, I've really enjoyed.
I think for myself as well, it's been a little bit of the Peloton, but it's been walks with the whole family or walks just by myself. But now my kids have their Fitbit and, their goal is 10,000. So Asha, you're putting us to work with, 20,000 daily. But walking has been huge for us. And, it's also just great to get fresh air, just to get out there and walk.
Over the spring, the summer, and now the fall, childcare has been a big concern for working moms and working parents in general. And that can take different forms depending on whether your kids are daycare aged and could have gone to daycare over the summer, but you weren't sure what to do, or now with remote schools. So what thoughts do you have to share on that subject, schooling and childcare in the age of COVID? And I know that could be its own topic, but the short version, if you would.
I'll start with myself. We are very fortunate that we've had the ability to get some extra help to help my husband and to help with the kids. They started virtual school just last week and they've adjusted well, and they will be starting school next week. But as a healthcare organization and as an employer, we've asked our leaders to give our employees grace because we know that things are going to come up that we can't plan for, and to be flexible. And so I think that's really important. It's been important for me. I hate that my kindergartner didn't have his kindergarten experience, and, I didn't cry and leave him at the door. But that's a part of being resilient and being flexible. And I think it's going to continue to change, the new normal, but being able to be flexible is going to be important, because our education system is going through a lot of changes, and there's a lot of pressure on our educators. And I know they're working really hard to make this right. And so we also need to give our educators grace and patience, because they're working through this for the first time as well.
Yeah, I will say that during when school was let out, the use of an egg timer was like my best friend. I would, as I had calls or my husband had calls, we would put an egg timer on for whatever the time call was, and then they could come in and we would then play, or we would do a lesson. And that was extremely helpful. My kids now will give me an egg timer when they tell me to go away. So obviously that's working well for them. My kids start school on Wednesday. And, I've really been, talk about resiliency in children. My kids, we've been practicing wearing masks, and it's like if they don't have their mask on when we're going someplace, or they forget it, they flip out. They are used to it. It's amazing how adaptable they can become. A lot of credit to our children for being able to kind of roll with it. So, hopefully it all goes well on Wednesday, and same to you, Melisha, with your children.
Thank you. And to everyone on the call with us, good luck.
The next question I have is tips from working from home. We've had to adapt to a new type of work. So what insights do you have to share on that?
For me, I have figured out that as an attorney, I was always sort of working nonstop, but I work really best in the morning early before my children wake up. So 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. is my go-to period. And then I also on the back end, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. I know that sounds terrible, but during the day, I'm actually able to take a walk, a break. I can read, I can cook. And so I've kind of realized that things aren't really 8 to 5 anymore. I don't know if they've ever really been, but we can kind of push the boundaries on when is prescriptive work time and workout time and cook time and family time. And honestly, I've really thrived in that setting. I didn't realize how freeing that was. How about you, Melisha?
I haven't had the opportunity to work from home as much, just given some of the demands of being here in person, but I've seen my husband, and he's been very successful. And I think, finding the right spot, like he is the right spot in the house. And that's where the kids know that daddy's at work. And if I'm working from home or taking a call, that's where I go. And so the kids know that is the work zone. And I think that's really helped set boundaries. And I think you said that word. And it's hard when you're working from home and you're teaching and you're being a mom and, you're being a friend and you're doing all these things. How do you separate? And so creating that boundary, working in place where we take calls or Zoom calls really helps the kids. So then when we're outside of that area, then, mommy and daddy are available. And so I think that's just a tip that's worked for us is, just keeping it to one area of the house.
I think we have time for one last question. And so I'll start with a little anecdote to put this in context. And, within the first 2 weeks of quarantining, when we had watched Frozen for probably the 20th time so far and had essentially lost track of what's morning, what's evening, what's the weekend, a little bit of fatigue set in. But at the same time, I think I realized that this is probably a once in a lifetime opportunity for bonding with your kids, and never again, hopefully, will we get a chance like this where you get so much time with your kids to truly engage with them and bond with them. So to me, that was a very, very important silver lining out of this. So for each of you, what has been the biggest challenge personally and the biggest silver lining?
I think the biggest challenge for me was that my husband is an ER physician, actually with Memorial Hermann, and I'm used to him being in the hospital, and he was home more. And, you know, he'll take calls with his buds in his ears and walk around, to Melicia's point of staying in one place. And he was driving me crazy, you know, so we had to implement rules and set our own times. You know, he's used to working in his office. I was used to working in my office, and our etiquette was off. So establishing a family etiquette was really important for us. Trish, I think you're exactly spot on with spending time with my children. You know, I was diagnosed with leukemia 2 years ago. I took 3 days off and went back to work on a Monday. Because as a woman, I didn't want to feel like I was any less than, that I could get everything done. In retrospect now with COVID-19, I realize how short-sighted that was. And this opportunity has given me the chance to actually bond with my children, to sort of take a little bit more me time, to take a little bit more us time. And I'm a little bit more understanding of my priorities, and that putting my family first is actually extremely important and necessary at this time.
I would have to agree with Alyssa. For me, my biggest challenge was, as we're all dealing with this, it was a huge change for us within our healthcare organization. And the challenge for me was not bringing it home, not bringing the stress home, because there was also a lot of changes to normalcy for my family. Like, daddy's home all the time now, and the kids aren't at school. They don't get to play with their friends. Everything looks and feels different. And so for me, being able to just separate and optimizing my time at home. And so that silver lining was the time with the family. And it continues to be, where my younger one learned how to ride a bike, and just, you know, being on walks with the family where everyone's looking forward to it. And so that's really been the silver lining. And that goes back to our pearls of wisdom, just the simplicity that COVID-19's forced on us, just going back to the core.
Great. Well, Melisha and Alyssa, thank you again for your time. I think we are all out of time. So that was a wonderful, engaging presentation. And with that, let me hand things over to our Executive Director, Jagdeep Ahluwalia, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tarush. I want to start off by thanking both Alicia and Melisha for their wonderful presentation. We really appreciate your insight, your wisdom, and the way you've explained everything. We want to thank past President Joya Shukla and former presenters Asha Dhume and Dr. Marie Guradia for their insight and participation. We thank all our partnering organizations and our media partners for their support. I want to thank Alicia Holmes Henderson of Shell for their continued support of the series. And I want to thank Seva Ravi Brahmbhatt at HCC, Asha Dhume and Dr. Marie Guradia for live streaming from their Facebook channels to help us reach a broader cross-section of the community. I also want everybody who participated today to thank Bhavna Kalyan at the Chamber office for all her hard work in making these webinars successful. Again, on behalf of President Tarush and our board and our members, we thank all our participants who logged in today, and we thank our speakers for making this a very meaningful conversation. Our next event is on September the 2nd. It's a power dialogue with Congressman Kevin Brady. We have pre-selected 5 business leaders from across the community to ask questions of the congressman. And the Consul General of India, Asim Mahajan, will be joining us. This event, like all our other events, are complimentary. There is no fee to attend. We do encourage you to go to our website and register to attend the event. With that, I want to once again thank Melisha and Alisa for a wonderful presentation, which brings us to the end of today's program. We wish you stay safe, we wish you stay healthy, and we hope to see you at our next event. Thank you and have a good day.